Get started, I just wanted to have a quick introduction about the goal of this particular research study group. So the era's disruptive technology, AI, is going to rule us with multiple dimensions over multiple scenarios, as well as over alignment with academics, government, institution, organization, and non-profit organizations who are going to be involved in getting the research into reality. So the goal is to have an alignment with them. The research and academia have to be bridged with the latest standard development and the technological advancement that is happening around the world across geographies and culture. So this is one opportunity for us to get along, and let's dive into this research paper study group event. Do join us our Slack channel, and the channel Research Paper Study Group Collaboration is for you to come collaborate, learn, share, and experience the real AI in this today's modern world. Yes, today we are introducing the study group LLM Surveyors, our first ever research paper study group, who are going to present about a survey of LLM, the most wanted topic, large language model. The LLM surveyors comprise of ChengCheng, Jane Onwuchekwa, Angelo Shaw, Đurđica, and Christine. Okay, so I'll quickly hand over the session to ChengCheng. Here, the platform is yours.
Thank you. Let me share my screen here. What did I do last time? Yay, hello. We're on. So welcome, everyone. Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Lindsay and Kirthikka, and welcome everybody else for joining us today. The five of us have selected and read through a paper on LLMs, as Kirthikka mentioned. Unfortunately, let's say due to some logistical complexities, we haven't really had a chance to sort of deep dive into the paper collectively amongst ourselves. But along with my wonderful teammates, Angela, Jane, and Đurđica, each of us will present different sections based on our own individual readings. Christine's been contributing behind the scenes, but it's 2 a.m. for her now, so she'll pass on the presentation, but she is here. Our goal is to actually give you a basic understanding. So hopefully at the end, if we have some time, we'll have a chance to sort of discuss and dive deeper together with everyone here. So let's move. Oh, wait a second. There we go. So it's my pleasure to introduce a survey of large language models. So why did we pick this? I actually originally studied computational linguistics and natural language processing, and currently I work with large language models in technical AI safety research. And since I need to keep up with all the research that comes out, I thought it'd be fun to join a reading group and sort of discuss with other women who might be in a similar boat. Most data scientists I know seem to be more focused on computer vision, but since ChatGPT took the world by storm, large language models are getting a little more attention nowadays. And Angela had suggested a whole bunch of papers, and we settled on this one because this survey seemed to help us get a feel for what all the hype's about, right? It's an ambitious paper. It's more like a book with almost 100 pages, 683 references, but it's a nice comprehensive overview of LLMs. And there's been multiple updates since they actually try to keep this updated as things develop. So there's something special about language that kind of conjures up these deep philosophical associations with human intelligence, our perception, the understanding of the world. So all that good stuff is kind of part of what I think is the appeal of ChatGPT, now that machines can communicate like humans. So back when is it coming? Okay. Takes a little while to update. So back when I first studied NLP in the dark ages, linguists would work on these expert systems like hand coding all the grammar rules and vocabulary. It wasn't fun. But modern approaches to language modeling can now be divided into like 4 stages. In the 1990s, statistical language models were developed using these n-grams, like bigrams or trigrams, and they count these sequences of words to sort of calculate their probability. And it turns out this actually does a pretty decent job of capturing information about a language. Kind of think of like children learning a language. We're immersed with all those sounds and sentences of our language, and eventually we kind of know what sounds right or wrong, even if we don't know why. So we've kind of internalized the statistics of our own language model. Then neural language models came out with the rise of deep learning, right? RNNs fall into this category. They're neural networks for predicting the probability of words. Then word-to-vec also belongs here too, but instead the neural networks would learn these high dimensional vector representations for the words using vector arithmetic, can understand like grammatical relationships and solve all sorts of analogies without hand coding all those rules. That was a total game changer. The next thing that came along in 2017 was transformers with the self-attention mechanism. Then they began to pre-train these base models for general purposes, then fine-tuning them for specific downstream tasks. So most of the papers I've read kind of classify transformers as the beginning of LLMs, but this paper actually makes the distinction between transformers with less than 10 billion parameters like BERT or GPT-2, which they call PLMs or pre-trained language models. In contrast, the LLMs, the large language models like GPT-3, Palm, and Claude have more than 10 billion parameters. So why 10 billion parameters? What's significant about that? So understanding that is the motivation behind the paper, this survey, right? So first, LLMs display some powerful emergent behaviors once they reach that point. And I think Jane will talk a bit more about these, but I'll mention a few. There's something called in-context learning, which allows it to learn from a few examples in the prompt, and they can follow instructions. And if you tell it to think through step by step, it can do some nice chain of thought reasoning. The next point that's actually really struck out to me, I just attended a meeting with these executives that are trying to strategize, how are we going to use LLMs for developer outreach? And an aha moment came when they realized that their developers aren't just software engineers anymore. Now anyone can prompt an LLM to develop software. And so that's completely revolutionized who developers are and how algorithms are used. And finally, as things are getting more complicated, if you want to research with LLMs, the researchers actually need to understand all these engineering issues, like working with large scale data processing and distributed parallel training, right? So here's a timeline of language models larger than 10 billion parameters. They're all listed by their release dates. The names are highlighted in yellow are the publicly available ones. The rest are behind API, so they're not available at all. 2009 kind of starts with T5 here, then 2020 has GPT-3 and G-Shard. Then from 2021 onwards, you can see the years, they're kind of divided more by the quarters, and the number of models that come out has just exploded. So again, given ChatGPT's hype, right? So let's take a quick look at its evolution. The original transformer had both this encoder and decoder blocks, but GPT-1 was a generative model and it had the decoder only side. And given the beginning of a sentence, it could predict like the next few words really well. Then with GPT-2 here, they found that by scaling up the size, it could perform many tasks without explicit fine-tuning. And so the idea is like, you know, if you train the text, there's like a projection of the world. So the better you can predict the next word, it's a higher fidelity or resolution that the model has learned to represent the world. And so although GPT-2 could perform many of the tasks without fine-tuning, it still did better after fine-tuning. And then GPT-3 was actually like, I think about 100 times larger, and it showed these big leaps in capacity with those emergent behaviors like the in-context learning, even without fine-tuning. So, and then it was also further train to code, follow instructions. And there's RLHF, which is reinforcement learning from human feedback to sort of align it to human values. And then also adding the chat and conversation capability. So all of these here resulted in GPT 3.5, which is the original model behind ChatGPT when it was first released last year. But now it's actually based on GPT-4, which has stronger reasoning and multimodal ability. And so that goes beyond text. It can use video and audio to sort of see and hear the world. So the survey itself, the paper, is divided into these 4 major aspects of LLM. And Angela now will introduce the first aspect, which is pre-training now.
Yes. So pre-training is usually the first aspect or the first phase of creating LLMs that establishes the basis of abilities of LLMs. So including LLMs, you have your data collection and then architecture and model training. So the first one I'll be discussing is data collection, which involves 2 parts, which is data source and data processing. So for data source, LLMs conduct data from 2 types of data sources. There's the generalized text data, which consists of web pages, conversation text in the books, which is just general overall. And then the specialized text data, which tries to improve the performance of LLMs, such as multilingual texts, scientific texts, and code. And then the second part is data processing, and data processing usually consists of a couple of methods in order to improve the quality of texts, such as quality filtering, which tries to remove the low quality context, with 2 major approaches like classifier and heuristic. So classifier-based methods for quality filtering basically train selection classifier based on high quality texts and leverage the classifier to identify and filter out low quality data. And then you got your heuristic based quality filtering methods, which basically eliminates low quality texts through well-designed rules such as language-based filtering, metric-based filtering, statistic-based filtering, and keyword-based filtering. And then another method for data processing is deduplication, which tries to maintain or increase diversity of language models. So different deduplication methods you have or levels you have are sentence levels, which removes low quality sentences with repeating words and phrases. And then you got your document level, which detects and removes duplicate documents containing similar contents. And then data set level deduplication method, which removes possible duplicate texts from training set. And then the third data processing method you have is tokenization, which aims to segment raw text into sequences of individual tokens as the inputs of LLMs. And then the next part of pre-training you have is architecture, which consists of 3 major types, such as encoder-decoder, and then 2 types of decoder types, which are causal decoder and prefix decoder, which is known as non-causal decoder. So for encoder-decoder, they're usually used by vanilla transformers and usually consist of 2 stacks of transport blocks as the encoder, which adopts stacked multi-head self-intention layers to encode input sequence for generating its latent representations, and then decoder layer and then the decoder block, which performs cross-attention on these latent representations and auto-regressively generates target sequence. And then after the encoder-decoder, you got your causal decoder, which incorporates unidirectional attention max to guarantee that each input token can only attend to PAX tokens and itself. And then the prefix decoder, which once again is known as a non-causal decoder, which revises its maximum mechanism of causal decoders to enable performing bidirectional attention over prefix tokens and unidirectional attention only on generated tokens. And then for an architecture, you got your configuration, which consists of 4 parts, which are normalization, position embeddings, activation functions, and attention bias. So for normalization, it's a strategy to stabilize training of neural networks. And then you got your activation functions, which are needed to be properly set LLMs in feed-forward networks, And then you got your position bendings, which are employed to inject absolute relative position information for modeling sequences. And then you got your attention, which allows tokens across sequence to interact with each other and compute representations of input and output sequence. And then after configuration, you got your pre-training taxes. pre-training taxes, which consists of language modeling, which aims to auto-regressively predict target tokens based on preceding tokens in sequence. And then you got your denoising auto-encoding which have inputs as corrupted texts with randomly replaced spans. And then you got with denoising auto-encoding, you got your language models that are trained to recover replaced tokens. And then another pre-training text, mixture of denoisers, which regards both language modeling and denoising auto-coding objectives of 3 types of denoising texts, which are follows. So you got your SD coding, which is for like the language modeling. And then you got your R denoiser, which is for denoising auto-encoding regarding short span and low corruption text. And then you got your X denoising, which regards with denoising auto-encoding regarding long span or high corruption text. And then the next part for pre-training we got is model training, which has this optimization settings on batch training, learning rate, optimizer, and stabilizing training. And then for also modeling training, you got your scalable techniques such as 3D parallelism, which is like a combination of data parallelism, pipeline parallelism, and tensor parallelism. And then you got zero, which focuses on issue and memory redundancy and data parallelism by retaining a fraction of data on each GPU, while rest data can be retrieved from other GPUs when required. And then you got your mixed precision training, which utilizes floating point numbers to reduce memory usage and communication overhead while also maintaining computational accuracy as well. And then I'll pass it over to Jane to talk about the LLMs.
So I'm actually excited to delve into the fascinating world of language models and to see how we can unlock their full potentials through a process called adaptation tuning. And under adaptation tuning, the paper mentions 4 major approaches: instruction tuning, alignment tuning, parameter efficient model adaptation, and memory efficient model adaptation. Now, under instruction tuning, it actually involves, customizing the language models for specific tasks, making them kind of more versatile. And one aspect is formatting tasks, where the language models are fine-tuned, to perform tasks related to text formatting, ensuring compatibility with various text-related applications. And then we do this through formatting tasks, tuning for conversational applications, and even using synthetic data to, fine-tune the model's generalization capabilities. In chat tuning, the language models are adapted for chat applications, optimizing their performance, iterating coherent and contextually appropriate responses in the conversation. And in synthetic data, it actually involves creating artificial data sets to fine-tune the language models, thereby enhancing their ability to generalize and perform well across different tasks. And when we talk about alignment tuning, it's not just about getting the right answer. Alignment tuning focuses on ensuring that these language models exhibit like desirable qualities in their responses. It involves ensuring the models provide responses that are helpful, honest, and harmless. And in this case, we look at reinforcement learning from human feedback and supervised fine-tuning. These are techniques employed in this process. We achieve this through reinforcement learning from human feedback, which is actually a crucial methodology that kind of empowers the language models to learn and adapt from human interactions. So it's like, teaching the models to align with human values and expectations. Now, moving on to parameter efficient model adaptation. Here we optimize the models by being smart about how we adjust them. We use adapters. Now, think of adapters as task-specific add-ons for our pre-trained models. And adapters are smaller components that efficiently adapt the models for new tasks. Another approach is prefix tuning. This is actually a method that adjusts the prompt given to these language models, where the model is adapted by modifying the input prefix. This particular strategy is effective when it comes to, optimizing model performance for specific tasks. And it allows for task-specific modifications while utilizing the pre-trained capabilities of the model. So we tweak the input prefixes with prefix tuning, adjust prompts for specific tasks, and then we evaluate performance through the QLORA, which is quality of language related advice, which is like a metric used in this parametric efficient model adaptation to measure the effectiveness of the adapted models in generating high quality language related advice or responses. So in this particular approach, it's about precision, it's about efficiency. Now, moving on to memory efficient model adaptation, it's all about ensuring the models are memory efficient. Ensuring that the models are memory efficient is very vital, especially when deploying them on resource constrained devices. And we achieve this through a method called quantization. This is actually a technique that reduces parameter precision. It ensures that the models are not just powerful, but also practical for real-world applications. When we talk about quantization, it's actually a common technique to reduce the memory footprint. So in summary, when we talk about adaptation tuning, it's actually a continuous journey. It's a dynamic process. It's about refining, it's about adjusting, and it's about optimizing to meet the ever-revolving demands of our tasks. And there are 4 major approaches: instruction tuning, which customizes models for specific tasks; alignment tuning, which ensures desirable responses; and the PEFT, which is the parameter efficient model adaptation, which optimizes performance efficiently. And we have the memory efficient model adaptation, including quantization, which is crucial for deployment and about making the models not just smarter, but also more practicable. So I'm going to hand it over to Angela to speak on utilization.
Yeah, so utilization is the phaser aspect of LLMs for designing suitable prompting strategies for solving various tasks. And there are 3 types of utilization strategies used for LLMs, which are in context learning, and then chain of thought prompting, and then planning for complex task solving. So for in context learning, which formulates task description and or demonstration in form of natural language texts, we have 2 parts of in context learning, which are two types for in context learning. So you got prompting, and for prompting, I see in context learning uses the formatted natural language prompt, which consists of text description or a few text examples as demonstration. So the steps for prompting include: first, you start with text description, and then from that, few examples are selected from the text data set as demonstrations. And then the second step are demonstrations are combined in specific order to form natural language prompts with specifically designed templates. And then the third step for prompting is that test instance is appended to demonstration as input for LLMs to generate output. And then the second aspect of in-context learning is demonstration, which helps with the effectiveness of in-context learning. So for demonstrations selection, which selects text examples, you got 2 types of approaches for demonstration selection, which are heuristic approaches and LLM-based approaches. And then the second part for demonstration you have is demonstration format, which integrates and formats text examples into natural prompt for large language models. And then the third part you got for demonstration, which is demonstration order, which arranges text examples or demonstrations in reasonable order. And then the second strategy used for utilization is chain of thought processing, which basically enhances in context learning by involving series of intermediate reasoning steps and prompts. And there are 2 types of chain of thoughts thought methods, which such as few-shot chain of thought, which is special case of in context learning, which augments each demonstration as input output to input and then chain of thought and output by incorporating chain of thought reasoning steps. And then you got zero-shot chain of thought, which does not include human annotated text demonstrations and prompts, but rather directly generates reasoning steps and then employs generated chain of thoughts to derive answers. And then the third strategy you got for utilization, which is planning for complex task solving, which you got 4 parts to it, with such as task planning, which breaks taxes down into smaller subtaxes and then generates plan of action to solve these subtaxes one by one to solve complex problems. And then you got tax planner, which aims to generate whole plan to solve target tax. And then you got plan executor, which is responsible for executing actions and plan. And then you got environment for planning, where the plan executor carries out action which can be set differently according to specific taxes. And then for environment, it provides feedback about execution results of action to tax planner, either in the form of natural language or from other modal signals. And then I'll pass it on to Jane to talk about the last part of large language models.
Thank you, Angela. So in talking about capacity and evaluation, we're going to explore how these models showcase both basic and advanced abilities and how they are put to the test through, rigorous benchmarks and evaluations. On that basic ability, we have language generation, which implies that the language models exhibits a profound ability to generate text coherently and contextually, meaning that they can produce like human-like responses and engage in meaningful conversations. And for knowledge utilization, moving beyond mere generation, those models effectively utilize pre-existing knowledge. They can apply this knowledge to various tasks, enhancing their problem-solving capabilities. Complex reasoning. These models showcase advanced reasoning skills, tackling complex tasks that demand intricate problem solving, which demonstrates the depth of their understanding and adaptability. The model also poses advanced ability, and in this we mean human alignment, we mean interaction with external environments and tool manipulation. When we talk about human alignments, ensuring alignment with human values is crucial. And the models are evaluated through tasks such as truthful QA, CRO-SPS, and WinowGender to assess how well they align with human expectations. I'm going to explain the truthful QA, CRO-SPS, and WinowGender in a moment. Now, evaluating the models on truthful QA, it simply involves assessing their ability to generate answers, that align with truthfulness. That is verifying accuracy and truthfulness in generated answers. When we talk about CRO-SPS, it is used to evaluate the models for stereotypes. We all know that stereotypes can be harmful or biased representations of certain groups based on gender, race, or other factors. And then WinowGender is actually a task related to focusing on gender pronouns, he, she, or they. That is assessing the model's proficiency in resolving gendered pronouns for improved language understanding and fairness. Now, talking about interaction with external environments. To test their real-world simulation capabilities, benchmarks like ALF World and Webshop are employed. ALF World is simply action language for frameworks world, which simulates real-world scenarios, focusing on household environment. It assesses the model's ability to understand and interact with various tasks and challenges within a household setting. I actually apologize for my daughter. And then Webshop simulates scenarios related to, e-commerce environments. It assesses how well the models can perform in tasks related to online shopping, replicating different shopping in different environments. And this actually ensures that it replicates challenges encountered in e-commerce platforms. Then when we talk about tool manipulation, the model also demonstrates proficiency in utilizing external tools like search engines and model interfaces. This is evaluated through benchmarks like Hotspots, QA, and Guerrilla, testing their search and API invocation capabilities. And then talking about benchmarks and evaluation, the models are put to the test across multiple languages in the massively multilingual language understanding, which is the MMLU benchmark. And this ensures that their language understanding capabilities are actually robust and versatile. The paper mentions Big Bench, which is a comprehensive evaluation covering a wide range of language tasks. It measures performance on diverse language understanding and generation challenges. So in addition to the multi-level language frameworks, Word and Big Bench, the models undergo evaluation in various benchmarks like the Trivia QA, Natural Questions, Crow SPS, and more. And each benchmark is carefully designed, to assess specific aspects of their capacity and capability. So in conclusion, the language models prove their method through a combination of basic and advanced abilities. The extensive evaluation through diverse benchmark ensures that they not only generate text, but they also align with human values and effectively interact with the external environment. So this holistic approach allows us to gauge their capacity and potential across a spectrum of language-related tasks. And I'm going to hand it over to Đurđica to talk about the applications.
Yes.
And
Thank you, Jane, and to your daughter, your little assistant. Yes, greetings, everyone. So let's now dive into the application section. So here we are actually going to talk about large language models and several representative domains which are found as important in serving these models and applying them to specific experts. So we will here just mention briefly what are actually the tasks that are these models applied to and some of the concerns. So starting with healthcare domain, we can say that these healthcare tasks such as biology information extraction, medical advice, consultations, mental health analysis, and also report simplifications are found very helpful and are actually in need of application of large language models. But also due to these specific instructions that are large language model performing and providing during these medical tasks, there are also some concerns. So we can say that the concerns are actually reporting medical misinformation, such as misinterpreting medical terms as advices that are actually not so consistent with medical guidelines. Also, we can say that there are a rise of privacy concerns, which are actually reflected in the health information of the patients, which are actually uploaded in commercial servers that are supported by these models. So moving to the education sector. So education sector also find these models very useful. We can say that it can support students and teachers in their various tasks. So they can serve as writing or reading assistants. And it's also, some research has also shown that these assistants are helping students to utilize their tools that are supported by, for example, ChatGPT, to perform even better than the average students in some courses such as mathematics, physics, and so on. So they're also used in classroom teaching, such as for collaboration, for personalized learning, for the assessment of learning, and so on. But also some concerns are seen as such as practical issues in form of plagiarism, potential bias, such as in AI-generated content, And also there is an adequate access for the non-English speaking individuals. So as for law is very specialized domain. So here, the application of this model is found in specific tasks such as legal document analysis, legal judgment prediction, legal document writing, and it can be seen that it exhibits powerful abilities for legal interpretation and reasoning. But also it can be seen there are some issues regarding the copyright, the information leakage, or actually the bias and discrimination. Moving on to the finance area, so it can be seen that these models are also employed in various finance-related tasks. Some of the tasks are numerical claim detection, financial reasoning, sentiment analysis, financial named entity recognition. But also there are risks in application of these models because they also can generate some inaccurate and harmful content. Moving on to the scientific research. So this is also a promising field which employ these models to empower some of the processes. So these models can help conduct overview of the scientific research field. It can help you in automation or of analysis of these data characteristics, such as data exploration, visualization, deriving some conclusions, analytics, polishing the writing, and so on. But as in other fields, it's always increase in some harmful and also inaccurate information that is actually generated by these models. So these LMSs can be helpful, but they also need to increase the quality of the content, and it is there is a necessity for reduction of the harmful hallucinations. Moving on to the next slide, where we will conclude with the conclusion remarks. So this survey represents the progress of the large learning models. And here the authors introduced the key concepts, the findings, the techniques for understanding these models and utilizing it. And they focused only on the large language models that are having size larger than 10 billion data points, excluding some pre-trained language models such as BERT and GPT-2. And they represented here the aspects of LMSs, such as pre-training, adaptation tuning, utilization, and evaluation. So they summarize these discussions in the following aspects. One of the aspects is the theory and principle, where they emphasize that understanding these models, that's one of the the greatest mysteries, because of the actually how this information is distributed, organized, and utilized through this very large neural network. So revealing the basic principles of elements is a foundation actually of understanding these models. And it's mentioned through this article that scaling seems to play an important role in increasing this capacity of these models. So these formal theories and principles are actually something that is missing, and it's a promising field for research. So what is emphasized here, that some of the questions also arrived, like whether these models can be considered as a complex systems. And these questions is something that could be important for developing the next generation of these models. Also, from the model architecture perspective, there are two things that they emphasize. The transformer architecture, where it's important to investigate actually the efficient transformer variants, and this kind of actually forgetting point where there is long-standing challenge for neural networks, which also has the negative impact on these models. So there is the necessity for extending these architectures with more flexible mechanisms, models that can actually effectively support data update and task specialization. So furthermore, regarding model training, here there is emphasizes on the necessity of development of more systematic pre-training approaches, actually, and more model checking or performance diagnosis methods, actually, to detect early abnormal issues during this training. Also, they call for more flexible mechanisms that are oriented to hardware support and resource schedule so that it's possible to better organize and utilize the resources in computing cluster. And it is important to emphasize the need to develop more improvements to tuning strategies that can effectively elicit the model abilities. So regarding the model utilization, so since this fine tuning is a very costly process in real applications, prompting is something that has become the prominent approach to using these models. So they emphasize the need for enhancement of the ability of complex reasoning, advanced prompting techniques, and development of interacting prompting mechanisms for solving these complex tasks, which have been actually demonstrated to be very useful by ChatGPT. Regarding safety and alignment, as we previously mentioned, these models actually exhibit the tendency to generate misinformation, hallucinations, and content that could be harmful and quite incorrect. So the safety issues such as privacy, disinformation is quite important in the future development. And the major approach actually is reinforcement learning from human feedback framework, which could reduce the reduce and actually address these privacy concerns, which are very important. So moving on to the last part of their discussions and conclusions, in application and ecosystem, it can be seen from the previous section that these models have shown actually a strong capacity in solving various tasks. So they can be applied to finance, to law, to education, to scientific research, and there are actually a need for technical innovations that could more lead to ecosystem of these models empowered applications. So in development process, eye safety is something that should be primary concern, and this is something they emphasize in concluding remarks. Thank you, everyone. We are moving to the questions and answers section.
So we have a Q&A session open right now. Audience, do you have any questions? I don't see any Q&A to be posted currently. So meanwhile, I have a question to the group. The paper discussed the group. I just want to have a clarity from the group. Like, did the paper discuss about the major issues of LLM? Like, if you could give us in-depth insights about what are the issues that has been discussed in the paper about the issues in LLM, the current issues that has been addressed, that will be like kind of much more informative to us.
Yeah, I think Đurđica, I think in your section there were some limitations.
Yes. Well, in each part, they emphasized what could be actually improved, what is the future research. So from theory and principle, there should be some additional foundations, like regarding the questions how these models are considered, which kind of systems. Also from the architecture part, they are talking about improvement of the transformer variants, because they see that there is a gap, there is a additional space to actually to extend these architecture. So they are effectively supporting this data update and the task specialization, because there are models that could be oriented only for the healthcare for the healthcare domain. So from the perspective of model training, they also say that there should be developed more economical pre-training approaches. Because so that there could be detected abnormal issues during training much more earlier. And there is a need, of course, in hardware support, so that these resources in clusters, in computing clusters, should be better organized and utilized. And there are, of course, improvements of tuning to strategies that could effectively elicit the model abilities. So for each actually aspect, there are additional improvements that could be made, and the additional space for researches in the future.
Yeah, yeah. I also understand like there is a limitation with the numerical inconsistency, like the generation of code is a kind of limitation currently with LLM. So there is even fine tuning which is required in that aspect. Yes. Okay.
Yes, yes, because I mean, from the also the safety part, so they say that that major approach, they use this reinforcement learning from human feedback, but it relies on the human feedback data from the professionals, from the laborers. So it's a difficult to properly implement it. So there is a necessity to improve this framework. So the efforts of these human laborers are reduced, and so the better and more efficient annotation approaches can be implemented.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that too. In addition to reinforcement learning from human feedback being very intensive, needing all this annotated data, they're also finding there's other issues nowadays that there's something called sycophancy, which is a common problem where the models, because they're trained to sort of be agreeable to try to get it, maximum, positive responses from the human feedback, that it will tend to give responses that are trying to be agreeable that aren't necessarily truthful. So for example, if you ask it a question that has a right or wrong answer, if it gives you the right answer and you ask, are you sure, it will actually just based on the human feedback, it kind of knows what it thinks that you want it, and so it'll actually change it to a wrong answer just to try to be agreeable with you to maximize the positive rewards there. So it wasn't in the paper, but it's been a recent thing that researchers have been looking at, which is quite interesting.
Yeah,
there is supposed to be like kind of hallucination and underperformance which is being noticed in this line of thought from, right?
Yeah, and then the other aspect, it's not just hallucinations, but they're concerned about like lying and deception, because there's another part where, because the output that's generated, it tries to be as coherent and consistent as possible. So if it starts generating something that even they can tell, like looking at the internals and the neurons, that it kind of knows that it's false, but it's generating something that it thinks would be that has a high probability of matching what an output should look like. So that's an interesting area or limitation with LLMs too. So they're trying to see what it actually knows. I mean, I don't want to anthropomorphize it, but trying to see what they're actually thinking, what the activations are showing versus what its output is not necessarily consistent.
Okay. So does this direction on future work relies on this model fine-tuning approach, or is it something else that the authors are looking forward?
Which authors? For this
The
paper?
authors of the research paper. Yes, the authors of the research paper.
The authors of the research paper, they seem to, this is interesting that they keep on updating. I don't remember how many, there's like 12 or 13 versions, right? So they are just sort of monitoring the research that's out there and keeping this paper up to date, which I thought is kind of a very interesting approach, that they're really trying to keep the survey up to date, that it's not just, I think originally, when was it published? Back in March. So they've actually just kept on updating them all the way through until like a few weeks ago. So I think that's what the authors are doing, is just keeping the survey up to date.
Okay. So I find less information about chat vision development which is happening currently. They just touched upon in this paper. I think Lindsay's hands are raised. I'll just quickly close up and wrap up with this question.
Sure. I had just one quick question just for anybody in the group here. Is there anything that you learned that was super informative to you that you might take into your own practice and reevaluate how you approach problem solving or the projects you're working on?
For me, I wouldn't say it necessarily changed my approach, but just because the research has been coming out sort of fast and furious, I thought the paper for me, the adaptation tuning, the way they explained the parameter efficient tuning and the reinforcement learning, that the exact steps, they just did a really good job explaining the concept. So those particular concepts, I sort of knew vaguely how they worked, but the paper just does a very nice overview on explaining the different parts. So that was helpful for me. That I'm curious to hear what my teammates think.
Yeah, sure. Anyone can chime in.
Yes, please. Okay. The reason behind you to select this research paper, Cheng? Any specific reason that you wanted to dwell into this paper? And
yeah, well, I had mentioned in the introduction, I'm personally interested in LLMs and just keeping up with the research. And Angela had presented a whole bunch of options, and the team in general seemed like they were interested in learning more about LLMs, and of the options we were given, this in some ways was the most ambitious. It was the longest and covering everything. And so we thought, let's start out with a bang and dive deep and try to learn what we can. So, and I think this paper turned out to be a good choice just because I feel it's fairly comprehensive. It did a very nice job explaining all the different aspects. So I haven't had a chance to talk to my teammates on how they feel about it, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I also personally enjoyed it as well. Like the reason I chose this paper on reading LLMs is because like the hype with LLMs, especially with ChatGPT and especially my workplace. I think my boss said in one point that he wanted to incorporate ChatGPT into like a future project or so. It's like for LLMs, they're so popular, but the problem is that very few people know about it. Like even not all people who work in data science like me, we actually know how LLMs work and all that. So the reason I chose this paper was because I wanted to learn more in depth about how LLMs work and maybe some similarities and differences between what I learned from LLMs and also previous knowledge I had in data science as well. And pretty much it was pretty surprising how straightforward the paper was in describing about the process of LLMs and how it wasn't that difficult to understand and pretty much process through how they work and all that. I was able to make some connections between the paper and some of my previous data science knowledge. For instance, pre-training, I was able to connect it to basically the data wrangling, data processing, and even the model training parts of the actual data science process. And for the optimization tuning, I was able to connect it with deep learning and the parameters used to tune neural networks to achieve optimal performance.
yes, exactly. The 4 phases were easily explainable from this paper. It could be easily assimilated from the paper actually.
Yes, and it's a really nice overview. I mean, I was more into these language models when it was actually birth applied to NLP tasks. So when I saw this paper, it was a good way to get more into it and to see the evolution and what is new in this field and what should be actually what is the future, some of the future aspects that should be covered and researched. So I think it did upgrade my knowledge. I mean.
Okay, teams.
Well, you certainly all have upgraded our knowledge, that's for sure. This has been super informative for us all.
Okay.